Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for the season premiere of Big Brother 26, episodes 1 and 2. Now, I will address this right now. If you did see on my Twitter, initially, I was going to do a review of episode 1, but I decided not to because, well, I mean, I'll just get into it right now. There's not a lot to talk about. And look, I was really excited for this premiere, considering the fact that this wasn't going to be a live move-in. This was actually going to be a little bit different. And here's the thing. There used to be a time, and it wasn't that long ago. It was maybe like 5 years ago that Big Brother premieres actually used to be very exciting. And it was something that I generally looked forward to every single year. I was excited to see, how they were going to start out the season, what the twists were going to be, seeing like the early interminglings of potential, dynamics in the house and things like that. I enjoyed watching, players and seeing them, slowly get their footing and things like that. And just seeing the different, see the different, potential pairings that were forming and all that kind of stuff. And that used to be a lot of fun to watch. That was something I used to really enjoy. Unfortunately, these days, that's not really the case. Ever since, I would say, Big Brother 22, season premieres just really don't hit the same, honestly. I think that would honestly be putting it lightly. It probably is one of my least favorite aspects of any season. Love the Night 1 feeds, very much do, but the format of these premieres are just so incredibly tired and disposable, and they're becoming honestly indistinguishable from each other. Like, they're that similar in the sense where, yeah, you might have a different theme, but it's basically the same thing. And so I was hoping, with the fact that they were doing away with the live move-in this year, that maybe they would try to do something a little different. There was going to be 8 house guests in one episode, 8 house guests in the other. Maybe they might actually, cook something up that might be exciting. Hopefully not the Battle of the Block. I don't like that. But maybe they had something interesting planned, and, no. I'll say that right off the bat. This was a very lackluster premiere. There's very little to talk about, honestly, and this might not even end up being that long of a video. At this point, like, I want so badly to just talk about the feeds and things like that, but I'm gonna save that for the review at the end of the week, because that's how I typically do things. I always try to go based on, like, where the episodes are and things like that, and try to give you guys the context that maybe the episodes didn't. But regardless, we're gonna go ahead and talk about this premiere. I was a little admittedly skeptical knowing about the AI theme and things like that. I'm not really a big fan of that. I feel like there's just too many things that are doubling down on the idea of AI, and I feel like something like The Circle, which recently did AI this season, that makes sense to have AI, because it's all on the internet, it's all, anonymous for the most part and things like that. People can play whoever they want to play as, and you don't realize it until the end. You can theoretically put an AI in there and nothing really changes. But with something like Big Brother, where you have a bunch of people living in a house and, they all know who's there, there's no real secrecy of that kind, it just isn't really that applicable. It didn't really seem like a theme that was really going to work, and yeah, I can say I don't know if it's working. Like, I really don't know if this theme is honestly going to work. I think they really just needed to, as usual, put a lot more thought into it, because I don't really like the way this is turning out so far. But we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So I guess we'll start off with episode 1. What's there to talk about? Well, we have the first 8 house guests. First 4 to walk in are Tucker, Kimo, Angela, and Chelsie. I did think it was admittedly pretty funny the way all 4 of them were, like, scrambling to get into the house. Nobody wanted to fall victim to the first in, the first in curse, where nobody ends up where whoever goes in first doesn't end up winning the game. I thought that was pretty funny. We do get a moment where Chelsie takes note of Angela and how excited she is to be in the house. So a potential dynamic there where, she really likes her, like, positive energy and is really, like, gravitating towards it. And The next four to walk in, we see Rubina, Joseph, Makensy, and Cam. Makensy is taking note of the fact that, like, the guys are shorter than her in heels. She wants someone that's taller, whatever. This is, like, literally the level of content we're dealing with. This is how little I have to talk about in this episode. I'm talking about a stupid diary room session of Makensy talking about how tall she is. Like, that's really where we're at this point. There is one relevant moment, I will say, where, like, Cam and Tucker strike up a conversation, and it seems like Tucker feels good with him, but Cam really isn't sure. He feels that Tucker might have something up his sleeve. So I thought that was interesting. And what I was hoping would happen here is that even though we had an hour, I thought we would have at least had a couple minutes to, like, really see just these 8 interact and just see the different type of alliances that were forming. They did that with Big Brother 16 and Big Brother 17 when they did the Battle of the Block. Like, they gave them at least a little bit of time to talk and get to know each other, but instead, I mean, we just go right into the backyard, and pretty much the rest of this episode is what we've been used to seeing on a live premiere, and I was so baffled by this. The fact that they chose to do a 2-night premiere, but they made so little change to the format to where it basically felt like a live episode that was edited. I mean, I was just... I don't know what they're even thinking anymore. Like, it just seems like they do not know how to structure a premiere. I don't know what happened after, like, Big Brother 20, but, like, since then, they just do not know how to put together a premiere, and it really does show in this episode. Because they make their way to the backyard, and they're immediately told about this opportunity to vote in a 17th player. Her name is Ainsley, but she's only going to join the cast if she receives at least 5 votes. And I was quite taken aback by this, because they really made a big deal out of the fact that, like, oh, there's going to be a 17th house guest, and they'll have the chance to vote them in. I really thought this was going to be, like, a big name of some kind. Like, they were going to try to, you know, bring, like, a challenge player, maybe a previous Big Brother player. That's what I thought they were going to do, but I actually liked the idea that it was somebody that we didn't know, that it was just another random, you know, that it was seemingly just a random girl that we don't know. I thought that was actually a cool idea, and this is the part of the episode I like. I like the conundrum of them kind of struggling with whether or not to actually vote this person in. Is that actually something that they should do? And I like seeing that moment. You know, we see Chelsie is someone who's immediately skeptical of this, while, like, for example, you have Angela, who feels that, no, it's good to vote Ainsley in because the attention's going to be on her and not on me. That's another person I can pin things on. Like, I think there is legitimately pros and cons to this. But if I'm being honest, I think it is more of a positive than people have been letting on. I've seen a lot of people say that the only answer here is no, and I just don't really agree with that. I think having more house guests in the house, especially this early on, is always going to be good for your game, because you can use that as a way to, if you want to play a more quieter and subtle game, you can absolutely use that to your advantage of, like, okay, well, this person's getting, you know, all the love. This person is overshadowing everybody. Let me just let me just fade into the background here and kind of just, you know, do my social thing, and then I'll really step it up when the time is right. I don't see any, I don't see any negative with that whatsoever. I actually think that's a really good thing to do. But ultimately, we do get to the vote where Makensy, Angela, Joseph, and Rubina are only the people to vote yes, which means that Ainsley is denied the opportunity. And we get right into it, but then, oh my god, we get this moment where Ainsley talks to them, and she's not real. She's actually an AI that's gonna have some role in the game no matter what, but she wanted to gain insight, I guess, on who they were. I don't know. This was so stupid. I don't understand why they needed to do this. I just thought that this was such a stupid idea for like a twist. And the thing I think that annoys me the most, it's not even the AI of it all, it's that they hyped this up like it was going to be an actual 17th player. It's almost like they saw how much people were excited to see Suri last season and they wanted to try to replicate that. but they did it under the guise of knowing that it wasn't actually a 17th player and that they were tricking everybody, and I just didn't really like that. It just felt really cheap and lazy to me, and I feel like if they were going to do this, they shouldn't have revealed that this was going to be a twist, let alone should not have revealed an AI theme, because I thought it was completely obvious from the moment Ainsley was there. I mean, literally look at her name. What letters are in her name? Oh my god, an A and an I, that she wasn't a real person. Like, it was fairly obvious to me, and they really didn't do a good job of trying to, like, you know, do this, like, mic drop of sorts. It was so stupid, and I didn't find it to be interesting at all. It should be noted, though, the actress that played Ainsley is, like, a known TikToker, Cosette something. I've never heard of her before, but apparently she's a pretty known TikToker that people were able to track down, so yay for her. She got a job, but I thought this was just really dumb overall. So then we get to basically what the rest of this episode is, where we find out that Ainsley was, yes, not a real person, but she wasn't lying about them voting yes and how that would be a positive for their game, because the people who voted yes are now going to be competing to get an exclusive power that's going to upgrade their game to some capacity, while those who didn't are going to get a punishment that is going to downgrade their game. And literally the rest of this episode is just watching these competitions play out. I'm not even joking. That's what the rest of this episode is. And I will say this. This is the one thing I will give both of these episodes. As much as I don't like the fact that the whole thing was just watching them play comps, they were at least equitable comps. These were not comps that were like catered towards a certain demographic or catered towards, you know, just like alpha males or something like that. This actually did feel like something where anybody could win. And that is the one thing I was really hoping to see this season. We just saw in reindeer games that they are capable of doing that and you know, having comps that feel fair and seem like they are geared towards everybody. And it seems like they are, so far at least, retaining that. And so that's good. That's an improvement. That's something I like seeing. That was a huge issue with last season, is that they had a cast that, you know, had some older people in it, but they didn't really do anything to properly accommodate them. They also, you know, had somebody who was deaf in the cast. They didn't try to accommodate him either. This season, it does seem like they have put more thought into the comps in regards to what can we do that everybody can participate in. I thought this was an improvement. And honestly, I didn't think the comps were that bad. The upgrade comp, they're like spinning in a chair and they're gonna like have to memorize a color sequence that plays out. Then the downgrade comp is basically there's like 4 boxes and they stick their head inside and there's like spiders or snakes or scorpions and there's like a letter inside of it. They have to like scramble a word, and then they're gonna have like 90 seconds to, you know, to put all the words together and things like that. So they weren't like the worst comps in the world. Again, it's just one of those things where it's like, when you're starting out a premiere and we barely know these people, I have no investment in what is going on. I give 2 shits who is going to win. I don't care, you know, if this person is downgraded or if this person wins or this person wins advantage. I really don't care. I just want to get to know these people, and they do everything in their power to take that away from us, and it just really pisses me off. I mean, there were admittedly some fun moments here. I loved like seeing Angela like get stuck in the chair and things like that. That was kind of a funny moment, and just seeing how into it she was. But ultimately, we do get to the reveal where we find out that Makensy has won the upgrade competition, and you know, she's now won a power, which there was some controversy surrounding this. Some people talked about how Joseph should have gotten this, and I will say I don't really know what people are on about, because especially when watching it back, they didn't even show all of Joseph's. They didn't even show like what time he ended up getting. So yeah, I mean, I see people say that like, oh, he had a shorter time than her, but when I saw Joseph, I saw that he, like, buzzed incorrectly and still had 19 seconds left. So I really don't know, honestly. Yes, they absolutely should have done a better job with clarifying that, but this is Big Brother. Are we really shocked that they're not? But ultimately, yeah, Chelsea's game is downgrade. She's now going to receive a punishment, and that's literally the end of episode 1. So yeah, really not the greatest start at all. I guess we'll talk about episode 2. Which, again, what is there to talk about? Episode 2 was, I kid you not, literally the exact same thing. Aside from maybe a few adjustments here and there, it was pretty much beat for beat the same. We saw introductions, we saw some good moments here. Like, we find out that Quinn is like a cardboard cutout of Zingbot, so, you know, he's like a real fan in that way, and that's something I like seeing. Matt talks about how he wants a showmance, like, this is very important to him. Leah talks about she wants to see a girl win and doesn't understand why men have, because they're so easy to, like, manipulate. I liked that moment a lot. I really like what I've seen of Leah so far. I mean, between her tweets that have been recently discovered and just things she's been saying, I really do stick by the fact that I think she's going to be, like, the wild card of this season. Like, she's going to surprise us in a way that we're just not expecting, and I think we're already kind of seeing the beginnings of that. But then we ultimately get to the, you know, order of the house guests. It's like Quinn, T-Core, Matt, and Leah. They're the first to enter, and then we see it's, you know, they end up bonding and things like that. We do get a moment where, like, Leah says that she feels pretty good with Quinn, so that could be a potential duo of sorts to look out for. Matt talks about how he wants to hide his physicality from everyone before stabbing everyone in the back, and let me just say, I don't think you have much to worry about. There might be a moment in this episode that makes it so that might not even be something to, like, be concerned with, but we'll get to that. The big moment I do want to mention that I actually really like that they showed is with Cedric, who immediately, you know, we know coming into this that Kenny is a cop and he's trying to hide it from everybody, and I think he's gonna have a really hard time with that because Cedric immediately takes note of the fact that he's got this big American flag tattoo, like, right on his arm, and I was just, like, laughing so hard at this because how are you coming into the house trying to hide the fact that you are this undercover cop, but you don't hide the most obvious thing that would suggest that? I really, again, just don't think Kenny thought this out at all. I don't think this is something that he even contemplated thinking about, but the fact that Cedric is already taking note of it, yeah, I don't think Kenny's gonna do very well at all. Cedric seemed like he already is onto him, so that could be something interesting to watch out for. There's a moment with it, so that was probably the highlights of this episode for me, was that moment. I want to see more of how that ends up playing out, especially considering what maybe happens to Cedric at the end of this episode that we'll talk about. I like seeing that. You know, I'm interested to see how that ends up factoring into it, but Brooklyn takes notes of this little box in the corner of the house, and then, oh my god, they're thrown to the exact same scenario as last night. Literally the same pitch and everything, but you could tell she, like, slightly, you know, did it, you know, she had some slight differences in the way that she said it, so they literally hired this girl to do, like, 2 recordings, and then that was it. Like, again, just so incredibly lazy the way they put this together. I couldn't believe they made them go through the exact same scenario and even hid the other house guests for them, making it seem like they were the first 8 house guests in the house and didn't reveal until they were with Ainsley that there were other house guests there. Again, I just thought this was so poorly put together the way they did this. Because, like, other times they've done the 8 and 8 thing, like, they put in the other house guests, like, they had them all come together and things like that, so I don't really understand what the point of this was, but basically, like I said, they're thrown in the same situation as last night, although this time around, they are way more against it. Like, most of them are really steadfast that this is not a good idea, that this is not something that they should do. Cedric immediately is, you know, talking about how I bond well with Ainsley, but doesn't really want to throw someone else in there. Matt doesn't believe she works at a surf shop, so he already is, like, suspicious of what's going on. Lisa also thinks that she's a threat. It's really only Leah who we see that thinks that this actually might be a good idea. idea. She doesn't see how, more competition is going to scare her. Kind of talking about what I said, where it's like, it's good to have another person on her side, but also have more competition in there. That's not really an issue for her. But ultimately, only Quinn and Leah vote yes, while everyone else votes no. And you already see the problem with this, because now that we are doing the same exact thing, literally we have the rest of the episode be comps, but only Quinn and Leah are going through the upgrade comp, so most of the rest of this episode is the downgrade comp, and it's a really boring one at that. It's literally that they're just using their head to, like, move a disc through a maze to get, like, to the number that corresponds with it. Again, an equitable comp, and I like that, but it's a really boring one to watch because you're just seeing people literally just, like, move their head ever so slightly. Some people were using too much. Some people were using their chin too much. Some people were, just not really knowing how to properly, coordinate this, but it wasn't particularly exciting. The one thing to take note of here that I did think was pretty funny about this comp is that the one person who is easily struggling the most, and I was surprised wasn't downgraded, is Matt, who said he was going to be this, like, real comp beast and physical comps are made for him and things like that. You can already see that he is just not as good as he thinks, and if these are what the comps are going to be moving forward, I am just really excited to see him just, like, scrambling and, like, chomping at the bit for a physical comp that just never arrives. I think that would just be such a fun sort of recurring thing for him, and I really do kind of want to see that happen. So I'm trying to not get my hopes up too much, but again, I like the comp so far, and if this is what they're going to be, like, I'm here for it, and this is part of the reason why I want to see people who normally have this huge advantage going into the game now arrive at a much bigger disadvantage and have to rely more on their social game, because I think that just makes the season so much more interesting. But I also like seeing a comp where, again, really anybody could win in the end, and that's what I like seeing, throughout all of these, and that's really thankfully been the case for all the comps so far. The upgrade also, I didn't really like here. They're supposed to install, like, 4-shaped motherboard chips, and then it keeps, like, rotating and things like that, making it difficult for them. I don't know. I didn't think it was interesting to watch at all. And again, I don't understand why they decided to structure the premiere in this way, because again, this is just so boring to watch. We know what the outcome is going to be, especially with the Ainsley thing. There really was no reason to be going through the exact same thing again, but that's what they do. Eventually, though, we do see a moment where they meet the other 8 house guests, but it is cut short. Because right as we're about to get that moment where everybody comes together and we start to see some interactions, here comes Ainsley, and she's like, oh my god, I'm here because no one's gonna know that, basically Ainsley lets them know that, like, she's here to stay, she's gonna be, behind the scenes the entire game, and she's gonna have some kind of control. She's gonna constantly come on telling them of announcements and things like that. So it's like, why do we even need Julie at this point when it seems like Ainsley is doing basically everything? But regardless, we find out what the upgrade and the downgrade's about. Basically, those who are upgraded, they're not going to know the names of, but those who were downgraded, they are going to. And it turns out the 2 people that were upgraded, besides Chelsie already, the other person is Cedric, and it's a pretty dour punishment, honestly. I was honestly pretty shocked at just how much they fuck these 2 over, because they not only are ineligible to compete for HOH, but they can't play in veto. They can't even vote at the eviction. Instead, they are basically what they are affectionately calling BB mascots, cheering on the other players, although they can still be nominated. And this is absolutely insane. This very much reminds me of what they did last season with punishing 4 people because they did badly in a comp. At least this time around, it's not so much that. It is more so the fact that they voted no. Now the 2 of them are essentially, like, powerless this week. They aren't able to do much of anything. And there's pros and cons to this. On one hand, you really don't have to do much of anything this week other than just focus on building out the rest of your game. But on the other hand, you don't really get to know anything going on, and you aren't really, and who knows, you aren't really able to know anything that's going on, and you aren't able to really do anything to save yourself if you are in danger. So yeah, I mean, I really don't like this punishment that much at all. I think that definitely could have been worse, but I mean, this is still like really bad. At least it's only for 1 week. I'll give them that. It's not like something where it's like, for the next 3 weeks you can't do this or anything. Like, it's, at least it's not that. They've done crazy things like that before, and I'm glad to see that's not the case, because I just don't like stuff like that. Usually that has to do with more good things than bad things, but I still really don't like this at all. And then we also find out that Quinn has won the other upgrade one, and as a result, one of him or Makensy will win what's called the deepfake HOH, and the other one's going to win America's Veto. My estimation is that deepfake HOH, it's probably like an invisible HOH of sorts, where like whoever ends up donning it, whether it be Quinn, whether it be Makensy, they get to make like some kind of like secret nominee, and they overthrow the HOH's power in that way. But who knows if it's like you have to use this at this, you can only use it until this point, or you have it till the rest of the game. I'm not really sure how that's going to go. And then America's Veto, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I'm hoping it's not an America's Player thing where it's like, oh, you have the veto, but now America has to decide what you do with it, because it's a cool idea. Like, I don't hate the idea of America's Player, but it completely robs that house guest of any agency whatsoever. So I don't really know what this is going to entail. I'm purely just speculating at this point, but I can't really assume that it's going to be anything that good. But with that, that's literally how we end things. And again, I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to this premiere, because I just don't understand the logic behind any of what they did here. I think if you were going to do a 2-night premiere and you were going to have it where 8 house guests come in one time and 8 house guests come in the other time, you probably should format it in such a way to where that's interesting to watch, and you do something different with all 8 house guests, and you find a way to get us to, latch on to them, but also still end up starting out, the first phase or so of the game. I think there is a way to do that, and I think there is a way to do it and make it interesting. But they just seem to have no idea what to do here at all. I mean, the way this was designed, I, don't have any idea as to why they thought this should be 2 episodes, because it really did just feel like we watched the same exact thing happen twice, and then watched the same comp happen like 4 times each, pretty much, which has been the main format for the premiere up to this point, except again, the comps were more equitable than they have been, admittedly, which I did like seeing. But it still doesn't change the fact that like this was so boring to watch. You had to sit through the same scenario twice, and then just did a bunch of comps, completely robbing us of meeting the house guests. And I think the worst part of it all, because of the fact that these were edited episodes, it completely sacrificed us getting to see the first couple days of live feeds. And yes, maybe that's only day 3, but like, you need to give me a reason as to why I missed those feeds and make it worthwhile. And they did not do that at all here. I don't think they took anything into consideration. It really just feels like something they decided to do at the last minute. They realized that the RNC convention was happening at the same time, and they're like, well, I guess we gotta pivot, we gotta do something different here. And it's like, no, you really didn't need to, because even at that, these episodes started at 9 o'clock, which is really weird for Big Brother, especially for a premiere. I don't know why they didn't just do a 2-hour premiere on Wednesday starting at 8 and then ending at 10. Then you don't even have to worry about the RNC convention. 2, you can just do 2 hours and you don't even have to worry about doing a 2-night premiere, and we get feeds like around the time we usually would. So again, I don't think there was any real incentive to do this 2-night premiere. It didn't really seem like there was any thought put into it, and it just really ended up baffling me because it just seemed like they did everything in their power to make this as boring as possible, and I really just don't understand what the thought was here at all. So again, I mean, it's a weird premiere to talk about because on one hand, there really wasn't much that happened. On the other hand, because there wasn't much that happened, it just left me feeling very annoyed because they kind of made us think that this maybe would, because of the format, that this maybe would be something a little different, and ultimately it was basically just more of the same. So yay, I guess this is just the format we're gonna have to get used to, and I really am not liking it. I'm really not liking it, I gotta say. I don't know if you can tell, but I really do not like this format at all. Look, I'm not saying that they needed to bring back, like, Battle of the Block and things like that. In fact, I'm really happy that they didn't because yes, I enjoyed it more in 17, but I just am not really a fan of that twist. I think it's so incredibly gamey. I think it's one of those things where you just need one person to, like, find a way to break it, and it's just so uninteresting to watch because you're just gonna see the same cycle happening every single week. So the further away we can move from that, the better. I'm not saying that's what they need to do, but I think they just needed to figure out a way to make this feel like it was worth it, and they really just didn't, and that's really what just annoyed me here. So yeah, overall, I mean, that's really all I have to say. I don't really have a ton to really talk about regarding these house guests or my first impressions on them or anything, because again, I just feel like we didn't get enough here. Besides, you know, despite the moment with, like, Cedric and Kenny that I thought was interesting, and also the brief moment with, like, Cam and Tucker, and even the small moment we get between Leah and Quinn, who I assume are, like, really gonna want to stick together now, because I feel like Quinn will probably end up revealing to Leah that he won the upgrade, and then she can go ahead and say that she was the other one. You know, I think that will find a way to, like, get those two to work closer together, but other than that, I mean, I really just don't have much to really glean from this premiere at all. So those are really my quick thoughts on the Big Brother 26 premiere. Let me know what you guys thought of this. Maybe you enjoyed it. Maybe this is what you like seeing. You just liked seeing stupid fucking TikToker AI, whatever the hell it was, just like do her thing and them do this stupid, admittedly interesting, but I thought that, like I said, I thought that was interesting. I don't really have a problem with that, but I don't like again, just how formulaic it was. I don't like how it went from something that could have actually been a little bit different, and then they basically just did the same thing that they've done for all these premieres. I don't like the fact that it was 2 nights. I don't like the fact that we had a group of 8 house guests, and they virtually did the same thing for both of them with very little change at all, really just different comps, and that was kind of it. I like that we had equitable comps. I like what I've seen of this cast so far, but other than that, I really just don't have much to talk about. I'm excited to talk about the rest of the season, but wow, this was just such a uneventful and kind of just a nothing start, which has kind of just been per the course for Big Brother, you know, these days, and that's just unfortunate to say because, like I said, I think these premieres used to be really exciting to watch. They used to pack a lot of stuff into those first, like, 2 episodes or so, and it just seems like now they don't even really make an effort to do so. So again, it's just really disappointing, but other than that, that's really it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, excited to talk about the rest of the season. Would love to hear thoughts on what you were thinking of it so far. If you're gonna talk about feeds, you're more than welcome to, but please put a spoiler warning in the comments for those that aren't watching the feeds, and also remember that, like, it's much harder to stay on track with what's going on, and spoilers, I mean, there's a lot going on already that I am very excited to get to talk about on Thursday. We also have a 90-minute episode on Sunday, so, like, I don't know what that's all about. Julie said there's gonna be a change to, like, nominations and evictions, and that has me concerned. I don't know what Ainsley has up her sleeve, but I'm really hoping that they don't use Ainsley as a way to try to kind of just do whatever the fuck they want and kind of just, like, inevitably like just break the game of Big Brother in a way that it hasn't been before, but hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully whatever they do decide to implement, it isn't too bad to where it's just like doesn't feel the same, because that seems that happens a lot of the time on this show. Stuff they do just sometimes never, not sometimes, most of the time never really ends up working out. But again, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.